kutoka milimani, Bungani hadi pwani, inasimama kwa sauti huru.
Kwa uadilifu na haki, sisi tuko imara. Kenya mpya kwa matumaini ya dhati.
Kutoka kaskazini, kusini, mashariki na magharibi, tunajivunia Kenya, nchi ya matumaini. Kwa uadilifu na amani, sisi tunaimba kwa kusema a logo for credible, peaceful, free and fair elections.
Tunatoka kwa jamii, vikundi vya kidini na mashinani, sauti za wanyonge na sauti za wenye nguvu.
Hakuna aliyeachwa, sote ni sawa. Elogi ni mwangaza wa mabadiliko ya haki. Kutoka kaskazini, kusini, mashariki na magharibi, tunajivunia Kenya, nchi ya matumaini. Kwa uadilifu na amani, sisi tunaimba kwa kusema a logo for credible, peaceful, free and fair elections.
Hello everyone, welcome to this special episode of Ilogat 15 with Darubini ya Uchaguzi. I am your host, Karen Wambui right there. And as you count down to February the 26th deadline, reforms time for electoral process is running out. So to make the system more fair and inclusive, today we will be focusing on a critical question and topic, which is, are the indigenous and minority communities truly included in Kenya's electoral process? And with me is an expert of political rights of indigenous and minority communities, and I'll let him introduce himself.
Thank you. I'm Nyang'ori Ohenjo, and I'm the team lead at the Center for Minority Rights Development. We are based in Kajiado County, Kajiado West to be precise, in Kisamis Town. Thank you.
Thank you. So just to set the context a bit of the discussion that you're going to be having, when we talk about inclusion in the electoral process, what exactly does that mean from your point of view? And who are we talking about when we say indigenous and minority communities in Kenya?
Now, when you talk about inclusion, I think we want to start from the International Convention on Civil and Political Rights, which Kenya is a signatory to. And the International Convention on Civil and Political Rights provides, a menu of rights, political and civil, that every human being is entitled to. And remember, I'm using the word entitled because these are not privileges. These are rights that we have by virtue of the fact that we are human beings. That's why we are entitled to them. So nobody can take them away. They can only be violated. So Kenya is a signatory to the ICCPR. Kenya has actually been submitting reports to the ICCPR. And one of the concluding observations has been that there must be efforts by the country to ensure inclusion in political processes by minorities, by indigenous peoples. Now, why do we focus on this group or these communities? The reason is, over the years, these are communities that have been outside the political conversation. For one reason or another, the reason could be deliberate exclusion. It could be inadvertent. Sometimes policies are met without really the intention of excluding, but they end up excluding these populations. So what has happened over time is that these communities that have realized they've been excluded and decisions have been made affecting them without their voice, then have been seeking this inclusion so that they have their voice on the table. And these decisions are either economic, these decisions are either social, in so many on so many matters. So that voice is critical, in the sense that for development to take place, every voice has to be heard, whether this voice is weak or strong. We need all voices on the table, and it's not about numbers, it's about voices. So all voices must be heard, all voices must be on the table that designs development. If all voices on the table of designing development, then it means that then you achieve equitable development. Remember, politics or political representation is the foundation for development. You cannot talk about development without talking politics. You cannot remove politics from development. Right now, you're having conversations about is it broad-based or bread-based or whatever government that is in place, and people are, clapping and making all sorts of how do you call them? Congratulations, because development is now going financial because of that. We were in Homa Bay the other day. So politics is very critical for conversation of development. The national cake is divided at the political table. The national cake is not divided at the executive. It's divided at the political table. So if you're not on that political table, forget about development. And that is why there is that effort of ensuring that the voices of these marginalized communities are also on this political table. Yeah. So that is the essence.
It's very interesting that you said that the national cake is demanded at county court, meaning that if you do not participate in politics, then your share of development is also not seen in your communities. Yes. So just to go to the other question, do you think anything has improved when it comes to this community, especially when it comes to participating in elections? Because observers, candidates, decision makers of
Yeah, I would say the improvements. Of course, because of being members of ELOG, in as much as the improvements have not been significant, but the fact that political players would want to listen to what CEMIRIDE has to say, or what members of the minority and indigenous peoples have to offer, is a step forward in itself. Before that, I don't think there was much concern of that. But I think as we gain ground, as we gain credibility, there's going to be an opportunity to ensure that we achieve the initial objectives of the Constitution 2010. Right now, I would say that we've achieved quite a bit, not a lot, but quite a bit, in terms of just making sure that visibility of the issues is there through ELOC, that we are still not attaining representation as would be required, and that means that we need to change the law, for instance, to ensure that this voice is actually effectively represented. And it's not just about law sometimes, it's about having the law and putting in place mechanisms to implement that law. I'll give an example. And we were having a conversation with some stakeholders on issues related to climate change. And some of them were telling us, okay, we have the law that persons with disabilities should be represented in the ward committees of climate change. That is a political process, by and large. Now, you have somebody in Kajiado County. This is probably a woman who is blind, so she's been put in that committee. Now, she's supposed to represent, bring on the concerns of those with disability. You are not supporting this person with an aid to attend meetings. You get? And when the meeting is taking place, the rest of the team say, we'll just tell them what has transpired. So the question is, what then is the importance of this person on this team in the first place? You put a name there. This person is supposed to attend a meeting. She's not attending a meeting, and you're claiming that the ward committee is fully inclusive. How inclusive is inclusive? You see, that is the question that really needs to be tackled. How inclusive is inclusive? So you have situations where, for instance, you have nominations and say, we have this person from this community. The question is, does this person even understand the issues of the community you're talking about? Has this person interacted with the issues of that community? This person could be coming from that community, fine. But does this person even identify with that community in the first place? So it's not just about numbers, but it's about quality. It's about the effectiveness. Yeah. I'll not name a name. We had a commissioner at the National Commission for the Constitutional Review. And she was, according to us, she was from a minority community, one of the indigenous communities that we're working with. So we approached her and we were like, Madam, since you've been appointed as a commissioner, we really would want to use your being here as one of us to be our eyes and whatever, and support our cause. And she was very candid. She was like, yes, I come from this community, but let me be honest. I've grown up in Nairobi. I was born, bred, and grew up in Nairobi. I do not understand these issues. However, I will support you to the level that I can. Are you getting? So it's not just about somebody who belongs to a particular community. It's about somebody who is able to understand the issues of these communities, because it's those issues that they need to come to the table. I don't know if I'm making myself.
You're making a lot of sense. Because now I'm seeing that just because you identify as being part of a community does not necessarily understand struggles
of the community. It doesn't. You could be an elite. Yeah. And being an elite, and we've seen those elites all over the place, and they say, yes, I'm from this community. However, I don't know anything about the community. Yet there are people in those communities who understand those struggles, who could actually play a more effective role in representing the issues, in articulating the issues, in, prosecuting those issues in a more powerful way, in the sense that now the inclusion and participation will then be effective. So the inclusion and participation that we're seeking for here is not just numbers or being members of particular groups. It is the quality that we're looking at. Are we able to see the rights of indigenous peoples in policy processes? The only way you can see that is by bringing on board people who understand those issues and can be able to prosecute those issues. Yeah.
I love the fact that you talked about having provisions in the acts, which is through the Constitution. Do you somehow feel that, one, there has been through this interpretation that has been allowed in the acts that is room for ambiguity? And two, do you also feel like we have structures, but it's kind of the structures are being used to structurally oppress people with the indigenous and minority communities.
Yeah, like I said, the Constitution of Kenya provides certain safeguards for minorities and indigenous peoples, and you step with at a point of it that provides for representation. You come to Article 56 that also provides that the government must put in place, the state must put in place mechanisms to ensure that these communities are effectively represented, especially in decision making. And when you go to Chapter 11, I think it's Article 174 on devolution, there's that had clear objectives of devolution, which were to make sure that people take part in decision making on issues that affect them. And this, by the way, I have to emphasize, this was something that we fought for as minorities and indigenous peoples in Kenya. And we were not wanting to let it go, because if things had been centralized, if you wanted to make a decision about how to exploit a resource in a particular area, you had to come to Nairobi, to the Minister of Environment, Minister of Mining, or stuff like that. So we wanted these decisions to be made at the level where the communities are, in a way of ensuring that they also benefit from the proceeds of what they've taken ages to actually protect. Because these resources are being protected by these communities. That is a fact. We cannot track away from it. When you go to a place and you're mining copies, there's a community that protected that mineral. That community must benefit from the profits of that mineral. If you go to a place and you're watching flamingos, you're using flamingos, it's because that environment, that ecosystem has been protected for you to have those flamingos there. So, and as I said, the decisions are made at a political level. Somebody makes a political decision. That is where we get the word policy. It's a political process. It's a political process in the sense that the political structure then decides how these resources, and that's why a government is a strong conflict between the people and the people who are leading. So we just agree that we're giving you this time, and you will put in place policies that will benefit us. If those policies don't benefit us, we kick you out. Now, the issue about the Constitution now is the implementation. Now, I do not want to really say whether it's deliberate or not. However, you feel like there is some bit of a deliberate attack to make sure that there is still control of the national wealth by a small elite of people. And they're using loopholes in delaying the implementation of effective representation of minorities and indigenous peoples in political processes, because that is where decisions get made. And it's very difficult for somebody to, upend a policy decision that has already been taken by government. So you find situations where, for instance, I'll give an example of Baringo County, of the NORs. We went to court, and the government was supposed to make sure that the NORs participate in the decision making about the proceeds of Lake Bogoria National Reserve. And the community is supposed to get 10%. Usually, up to it's supposed to be increased to about 15% of the proceeds. So what somebody does is, because the government has accepted and said, okay, the NORs have to be part of the committee that discusses this, they go and pick somebody from anywhere and say, this person is an NORs. So this person will represent your interests. Now they go back and say, go to the court and say, yes, we have an NORs who is now on the team. Does that serve the community interest?
It does.
It does not. So those are the issues at play. So sometimes there's a deliberate hand of somebody still wanting to control, because let's be honest, politics is about wealth. It's about national wealth. And it's about who owns this wealth. When you're talking about carbon markets, you're talking about forests in this country, you're talking about the Okik, you're talking about the Segwer, you're talking about a very big chunk of pastoralists. Who is making that political decision to invest in carbon? The government. Is the community part of it? No. So by the end of the day, you find the communities are being thrown out. And that is why political representation then kicks it, becomes very critical. So we do not reach a place where we can say that the minority voices as envisaged, the indigenous people's voices as envisaged in the Constitution of Kenya 2010 has been effectively achieved. No, it hasn't. We are still way that gap. And we're hoping that sooner than later would then have an effective representation of these voices in political decision making, because that is where all our problems begin and our answers stop, at the political decision making table.
I think just based on the value conversation that we're having, we're seeing that our constitution is promising equality, but clearly there are still major hurdles that you're facing, especially when you're championing for indigenous and minority communities. What do you think is like one of the biggest challenge from all those challenges that we have been unpacking here that you feel are fully preventing them from taking part in elections?
For me, I think the biggest challenge is the capacity of poets like us to comprehend, to appreciate the need for protection of the rights of minorities and indigenous peoples in the political processes. The people whom we call duty bearers, the people who are charged with the responsibility, the state responsibility of making sure that they implement the Constitution. Because remember, the Constitution provides that every person is a state officer, is under obligation to interpret and implement the provisions of the Constitution to the letter. So our biggest challenge is not even in the communities. Our biggest challenge is with the state actors, with the policymakers, to be able to effectively, efficiently, and in a practical way interpret and implement the Constitution, because they're the ones charged with that responsibility. The responsibility is not the communities, to interpret and implement. The responsibility is with the state officers. So that is where our biggest challenge is. And that is where I think as we move along, we'll be looking forward to finding a way of working with the state actors. We work very closely with quite a number of government agencies, by the way. We have several memorandums of understanding with several government agencies. We work very well with Attorney General, Attorney General's office. The issue here is we need state officers to be willing to learn on how best they can implement the provisions of the Constitution that relate to minorities and indigenous peoples. To me, that is the biggest challenge. That is the biggest probably issue that, if tackled, then would have a smoother implementation process. There are various reasons that could be contributing to this. And for me, one of the reasons is because we come from a colonial hangover aspect, where we received education. Many of us received an education that actually abused us. Many of us received an education that taught us to hate ourselves and amplify whatever was for us to be the best. So we were trained to hate each other as a people. We were trained to call ourselves primitive. So when an indigenous community comes up and says we want representation and we're in our shukas and our whatevers, a state officer will be like, look at these backward people. Well, why are they disturbing us here? Are you guys know what I mean? So the mentality of the education we received is still stuck in so many of us. We still think that whatever we were exposed to is what is development. Because when you look at the curriculum, for instance, it was designed in such a way that pastoralism was seen as a primitive way of living. So everybody must be settled. Everybody must grow crops. Which crops are required? By the way, coffee and tea. Where is this coffee and tea going to? Europe. Approve it. Yeah. That is the mentality we have. So whatever is being done for the market, not feed ourselves. Now, if you looked and you've been told eating meat is bad, which is a very misleading notion. Because this somebody who wants you to, to move away from your healthy diet gives you a lot of stuff that is going to destroy your health so that they can control you. They can continue controlling you. And those decisions of meat is bad. We need to vaccinate this meat is being made at the political level. The decision of bringing fertilizers so that we do not use our manure in our farms. The decision of saying you cannot use your seeds. You have to go for the Monsanto seed, which has a terminator technology, so that when you plant it, you'll not replant it again. You have to go back to the shop. That decision is being made at the political level. And somebody who owns a private company, somebody that is producing this thing, is influencing that politician. So that is why we say that it's at political level where you have effective representation of these communities. If they want to maintain the indigenous knowledge and indigenous technologies and ensure that they are self-sufficient in food production, then they have to protect themselves at the political level. That's the foremost. You cannot protect yourself in the village because the moment the law is passed at the political level, you will be arrested. So the best way is to arrest it at the police level. And that comes with the representation. So the issue of vote, you cannot, and that's why I say you cannot divorce development, you cannot divorce economy, you cannot divorce agriculture from politics. When people are being given fake fertilizers, who made that decision? It was not a technocrat, it was a politician somewhere who made that decision to go give people fake fertilizer. What happens? This person is produced, then gets affected. And you push that person into poverty, you push that person into hunger, and things like that. Well, a decision is being made that students must pay examination fees, and that means that then those ones from minority communities might probably not be able to sit the exams. Who is making that decision? It's being made at the political level because it's not being made in the village. And that is why political representation that doesn't pass. Yeah.
Thank you. I think just shaking down, do you think there's any example of any past election where you felt like exclusion was clearly felt by the indigenous and minority communities? Maybe probably in voter registration nomination process or even how the polling stations were set up?
There are quite a number of situations. The first one was the first example I could give was this nomination that Jubilee to this Ogieke Emmanuel Scott, who I think Peter, who later died in an incident, who was nominated as a senator under the youth bracket or representation. So we also know the Ogieke. Immediately after he died, of course, there was that celebration of who was nominated. Remember, this is a nomination, not an election. After he died, unfortunately, there was bad spirit. He was not replaced by another Ogieke or by another indigenous person. So, and probably because he had started championing for the rights of indigenous peoples. And I remember at some point he was entitled to stop, championing that, because he was a nominated person and his nomination policy is called class exclusion in its, in its fiercest forms. Immediately after elections, 2022, we had quite a number of uprisings in a number of constituencies of counties where you have MCS, members of county assembly, being nominated from outside those counties. No, and this is where we disagree with the National General Equality Commission report. You find a situation where I've gone to work in Baringo. I'm not from Baringo, but I've gone to work in Baringo. I'm maybe a Luya, a Luo, or a Nyala, and we are 5 people employed by the county government. Another one is working in business. Another one is probably working in an NGO. So you are 10. You're dead. According to LEC, you are a minority in that group, which is wrong, because you do not fit the definition in international human rights law and criteria. You do not fit the definition of a minority, because even if you are 10 or 11, yes, you're small in number. However, you have power. You will have financial power. You probably have political power, because if you're working there, you can access the government. You can access the CEC. But then you have a population in that county that is probably 70% poor. So you find that these 10 people who have characterized themselves as a numerical minority are the ones who are then benefiting from the reinforced opportunities for minorities. So you are here, you are employed. There is a tender that is supposed to go for minorities. Yes. In that constituency, you are the one accessing it. It's below first. You get it?
Yeah, getting.
So that is explosion, and that is the same thing that happened with the nominations. Those nominations are supposed to be ring-fenced for those communities, even if they're many in number. Their population is still poor. They are supposed to be the ones being represented in that national assembly. Not you who is employed. You are earning hundreds of thousands of shillings. Then you still want to be in National Assembly, earning another hundreds of thousands of shillings and controlling how the development is going to take place. We've seen situations where people have contested in a different county and are being nominated in a different county.
Yes.
It's wrong. You are excluding those populations. They need to have their own people. The issue of representative democracy Representative democracy is premised on the fact that you're being represented by the people who understand you. That is the philosophy around representative democracy, which is a Kenyan democracy. The other democracy is the Israeli type of democracy where people just vote parties and then parties nominate people to government. You do not vote in a constituency. There are no boundaries. So you vote a party. So the party that wins is given a number of slots. That is not representative democracy. Ours is constituency-based, boundary-based. So if I'm from Budalangi, for instance, it does not make sense for somebody to come and represent me who comes from Nyeri. What will that person be representing me for? This person doesn't understand the dynamics. You can't even go and vote there because you don't know why or what kind of issues are these people facing. So those are the gaps, the lacunas that we need to now heal in the constitution with the proper laws to ensure that there's effective representation of minorities, of the indigenous peoples, to ensure that their voices are not being stifled far. Because that is what is happening currently by taking advantage of a loophole that is existing to further marginalize these communities and these voices.
So I think it's very interesting that we have shifting in that people who are from different communities are representing people who are not from their community. And then you run it back. No. I think just a fact that people from that community cannot get the proper representation, to me that's very concerning, because as you're saying, it's representational democracy, then you should have someone from your community represent you. Yeah. So to go into the next segment which connects to this, when we talk about this, what do you feel like in terms of the sense of urgency that can be done in line with this February 2026 deadline for the electoral reforms, which is just around the corner? If we miss this window, we definitely know the next general election in 2027 could once again not the voices of the indigenous and minority communities. From your perspective, as the acting head of CEMIRIDE, what are the 3 minimum reforms that you think could be put in before the deadline?
I think the first one is at Kohananda. We need to name that at Kohananda, and we really need to get serious for this. We need champions in parliament, in the political sphere. The current chair, I think the notice warning, Ethocom has been part of this conversation for the last 25 years, the last 30 years or so. We hope that she's not going to run away from us the way so many have run away. We hope that he's going to actually be the advocate for ensuring that we have laws in place that we protect effective representation of minorities and indigenous peoples. Him being one of the, and having worked with us very strongly previously. So we are looking forward to working with the APC team, with the ELOG, to ensure, and the political parties registrar, to ensure that we have at least Article 100 enacted in a way that secures effective representation. And what we're looking at, we actually are not looking at CEMIRIDE. We've actually been opposed to what are called nominations, because nominations have a way of disempowering people. If I'm nominated, I owe my allegiance to that person who nominated me. Yes. I mean, by fact, you cannot run away from it. we advocated for, and we still advocate for, electoral colleges. Electoral colleges where minorities and indigenous peoples are present, so that those ones who are not represented can be able to effectively represent themselves. So if we are to about Ogiek, for instance, because they are found in different jurisdictions. So you have Ogiek in Nakuru, you have Ogiek in Eldoret, in Barimbo, you have Ogiek in Montelo.
Yes.
You have Ogiek all over the place. They can form an electoral college, that they'll elect a woman and a man to go up and represent them for a specified period of time. So the communities that are not represented and they are identifiable, for instance, and that is what we're going to push for. We want to push for electoral colleges, not nominations. When we're enacting Article 100, we want to design it alongside what we had in Bomas craft, electoral colleges. Let people give their representatives. Those representatives, they think, understand the issues very well and can be able to effectively represent them. Instead of saying, we are going to nominate, that would not cure the program. So I think for me, at 100 would be critical. The next would be the Political Parties Act, to ensure that we have embedded provisions, deliberate provisions with the representative mechanisms for representation of minorities and indigenous peoples. Because what we have is what we call tokenism. Political parties are playing tokenism when it comes to minorities, marginalized communities representation. They want to appear like they are aligning themselves with the Constitution, but they responded to the Constitution. But in actual sense, they're doing very insignificant stuff of ensuring that we have effective voices, because the political parties are the engine of political representation, and they must lead by example and ensure that these voices are not tokenistic, that we are not putting people there just for the sake of putting people there, but they appear coming from these communities. We want to see real significance in those representations. Yeah.
So we talked about I think as you were giving the 3 million reforms that you think should happen, talked about your call to the IEBC, which I loved, and to the political parties now. Do you think perhaps you also have a call to the parliament in relation to what you're talking about?
Yeah, definitely. Parliament is the one that will have to pass this law. And my call to Parliament and members of Parliament is that let us be serious outside Kenyans. Let us be serious and pass these laws. Not all members of Parliament will go back to Parliament. Those who will not go to Parliament, what I would want to ask yourself, what's really Parliament? What will be your leaders? Because not all of them will go back to Parliament. Not all of them will be re-elected. What will be that thing that you'll be proud of having contributed to in the process of the development of this country? Because law is just a system, a framework that enables us to grow as a country, to develop as a country. So I would want to really urge Parliament to drop the games around terminologies and whatever, and let us enact Article 100 the way it is. Because when the Constitution was the writers of the Constitution, when they provided the list of the groups that needed representation through Article 100, they already identified who these groups are. We have no business trying to identify these groups again, because they're already different. So we need to get to Article 100, drop the special interests, suckers, get Article 100 Act of Parliament in place before 26 February 2026, so that we can be able to give the excluded communities in this country a voice for emotion. And for the communities, the fight is still on. We need to ensure that we are always alert, we are always ready to push to the next rate. We've achieved a lot with the communities, and we are happy. But we're also calling on the communities that we should not rest on laurels. We should actually intensify the efforts to ensure that that political recognition, because we cannot achieve anything else without that political recognition. I know we've moved to climate change and very much stuff like that. However, the political recognition is key. It's mandatory for us to even achieve so many other things. For the stakeholders like ELOG, we need to continue working together. ELOG and ELOG members and all our other partners, there's still a lot to do in terms of even just ensuring that we still develop the knowledge around how best governance can be achieved around the issues of minority and indigenous people's rights.
Interesting. I also tend to believe that this podcast is for young people. So in case someone who's a young person and is coming from an indigenous community planning to enter into the political rights space, either as a candidate or also planning to join the civil society to call for accountability in a candidate, what message would you have for them?
The message I will have, especially for young people, is that actually for the young people, the future of this conversation depends on them. The young people that I really want to challenge them so that they take up an mantle, because the fight is still, the people who started the fight, of course, are facing out. We are becoming older, and it means that we must get a new generation getting into these spaces, either the political level or civil society level or in other spaces, even in government. And those who is joining the government, I think what I would just want to tell them is that they should also not shy away from protecting the rights of their people, because then they are in a very advantaged position to be able to influence policy from within government.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's not about, I'm in government, this is the policy. No. It's about, do you have evidence that it can work better? It's not about opposing government policy, because, as I said, a lot of our policy today is derived from the colonial regime. Yes. A lot of our culture is actually British culture. It's not our culture. The land law that we have in Kenya, for instance, today is a British land law. We've never had a Kenya land law. The land law that we were bequeathed in 1902 through the Crown Ordinance Acts is what we are calling today the Private Land Act and the Public Land Act. So what we've only added is the Community Land Act. So by and large, the policy of how we adjudicate land is a foreign policy. It's not an African policy. So what I can tell young people is that we still need a lot of knowledge around how best can we make government policy work for us. That is not opposing government policy. It is making government policy better in a way that it works for us within our contexts and not within the British context, because what we got was a British context. That is what we are struggling to always deal with.
So I want to hear your closing shots as you are up the episode.
Okay. I think first thing that I say is we are grateful for the 15 years of ELO. We are happy that ELOG has existed this long, with the challenges that have been there. We've been learning along the journey. We have a lot of work ahead as ELOG, as our individual organizations, to ensure that political dominance in this country works forever. I would want one day, if it would be possible over there in my life, to experience policies like public health facilities being to the level where even the president can be treated in fair. To have public schools that provide quality education to the extent that people would only go for private schools if they just public roads, public infrastructure that is able to serve efficiently the populations in those areas. And this can only be done if we are able to achieve proper political systems or proper political structures that are guided by the values that we have in the Constitution, that are guided by humanity, that whatever you do, whatever political decision you are making, you are considering the human being who is going to be affected by that decision. That you do not just sit in a political office and decide that you want to cause suffering to a population. That if you're given a political responsibility, if you're elected into political office, you're being elected so that you better people's lives. You provide systems that would make life easier to live, happier to live, and more enjoyable. So I would want, I'm dreaming, I'm hoping that through the work that you do, that we're able to achieve that.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank you very much, Mr. Nyang'ori, for your insightful work. It's celebrates, and hopefully we pray that you may be able to continue to do more of this and even better for the community. So my closing remark is bado ni wapambano wapambai. So the fights and the struggle for political rights for indigenous communities and people of the minority will always continue. So will Kenya's 2026 electoral reforms finally include everyone or leave the marginalized behind again? That is a question that I leave to the audience. So follow us on our social media platform on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at ELOG-KNY. Thank you very much.
Kutoka milimani, Bungani hadi pwani, ELOG inasimama kwa sauti huru.
Kwa uadilifu na haki, sisi tuko imara. Kenya mpya kwa matumaini ya dhati.
Kutoka kaskazini, kusini, mashariki na magharibi, tunajivunia Kenya, nchi ya matumaini. Kwa uadilifu na amani, sisi tunaimba kwa kusema ELOG for credible, peaceful, free and fair elections.
Tunatoka kwa jamii, vikundi